That cold morning, no one expected an act of kindness to change everything. What started as another day on the road became a story the whole town tried to explain, and few had the courage to tell. Before we begin, subscribe and turn on the bell. Here we show that behind the engines and the leather, there are still human hearts. The rain had just let up, leaving the asphalt outside the old roadside diner slick and shining under the weak November sun. Jack Harlan pulled his Harley into the gravel lot, the engine's low rumble fading to a sigh as he killed the ignition. His leather vest, patched with the faded emblem of the Iron Hawks, a stylized bird rising from flames, hung heavy on his broad shoulders. At 48, Jack carried the weight of 2 decades on the road, his face etched with lines that spoke of sun-baked highways and nights too quiet to sleep through. He swung his leg off the bike, boots crunching on the wet stones, and paused to light a cigarette. The smoke curled up like a ghost in the chill air, mixing with the scent of diesel from the trucks idling nearby. Inside the diner, the air was thick with the smell of burnt coffee and frying bacon. It was the kind of place that hadn't changed since the 70s. Red vinyl booths cracked at the edges, a jukebox in the corner humming faintly with some forgotten country tune. Jack slid into a stool at the counter, nodding to the waitress, a woman named Rita with tired eyes and a smile that didn't quite reach them. She'd seen him before, part of the Hawks who rolled through every few months, their bikes lined up like sentinels outside. To most folks in this dusty stretch of Nevada highway, the Iron Hawks were just another biker crew, rough around the edges, maybe trouble if you looked too close. But Rita knew better. She'd poured coffee for Jack enough times to see the quiet in his stare, the way his calloused hands cradled the mug like it was something fragile. "Mornin', Jack," she said, sliding a menu his way without asking. Her voice was soft, laced with the weariness of double shifts. "Usual black?" He nodded, eyes drifting to the window where the lot stretched empty except for his bike and a couple of semis. "Yeah, and whatever the kid over there's havin'." He jerked his chin toward the far booth, where a little girl sat alone, her pigtails damp from the rain, clutching a stuffed bear. She couldn't have been more than 7, her sneakers kicking idly against the booth's base. No parent in sight, just a backpack slumped beside her, unzipped enough to show a lunchbox and a crumpled drawing. Rita followed his gaze, her expression tightening. "That's Lily. Her mom's inside, paying the bill or something. Says she's waiting for a ride to the city. Rough morning for him." She poured his coffee, steam rising in lazy spirals. Jack took a sip, the bitterness grounding him. He'd seen plenty of strays on the road, folks down on their luck, kids with eyes too old for their faces. The Hawks had a code about that. You didn't turn away the helpless, not when the world already had its boot on their neck. As if on cue, the bell above the door jingled, and a woman burst in, shaking rain from her coat. She was in her early 30s, harried, with dark hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail and a phone pressed to her ear. I know. I'll be there by noon. Just hold the line." She spotted Lily and hurried over, dropping into the booth with a sigh that seemed to deflate her whole body. The girl looked up, her face lighting just a fraction. "Mommy, can we get pancakes?" The woman, Elena, Jack would learn later, managed a weak smile. "Maybe next time, sweetie. We gotta go soon." But her eyes betrayed the strain, flicking to the counter, calculating costs she couldn't afford. Jack watched from his stool, the cigarette ash falling forgotten onto the counter. Something in the way Lily hugged her bear, whispering secrets to its ear, tugged at him. It reminded him of his own daughter, Sarah, back home in the small house on the edge of town. Sarah was 12 now, all legs and questions, her laughter the one thing that cut through the engine roar of his life. He finished his coffee and stood, tossing a few bills on the counter, enough to cover his tab and then some for the booth. Rita caught his eye, a silent understanding passing between them. As he headed for the door, the jukebox clicked over to a new track, an old ballad about lost love and open roads. The melody hung in the air, soft and haunting, like a memory surfacing unbidden. Jack paused, his hand on the door handle, the lyrics wrapping around him. Under the neon sky, I wrote your name in the dust. Outside, the sun broke through fully, casting long shadows across the lot. Jack straddled his bike, but before he could start it, the door swung open again. Elena stepped out, Lily trailing behind, the girl's small hand in hers. "Sir? Wait." Elena's voice was tentative, edged with desperation. She approached, Lily peeking from behind her legs. "You left too much inside. We can't take that." Jack met her gaze, seeing the pride warring with the need in her eyes. "It's not charity," he said quietly, his voice gravelly from years of wind and smoke. "Just breakfast. Road's long, keep your strength." He revved the engine once, a low growl that vibrated through the ground, but didn't pull away. Lily stared at the bike, wide-eyed, her bear dangling forgotten. "Mister, do you play music, like on the radio?" The question caught him off guard, innocent and piercing. Jack's hand tightened on the throttle. Music. It had been years since he'd touched a guitar, since the nights around campfires where the Hawks would share stories and songs. His own tunes, scribbled in faded notebooks, locked away like secrets. "Sometimes," he replied, a faint smile cracking his stoic mask. "Why?" Lily glanced at her mom, then back at him. "My dad used to play. Before. He wasn't around." Her voice was small, but it carried the weight of absence. Elena's face flushed, and she knelt to hush her daughter, but Jack held up a hand. "Tell you what," he said, the words forming before he could stop them. "If you're heading through Hawk territory, mile marker 47, look for the campfire sign. Might be some music there tonight." He didn't know why he offered it. The Hawks' gatherings were private, a brotherhood bound by loyalty and silence. But something in Lily's eyes, that quiet plea for a melody in the chaos, stirred the embers of a life he'd half buried. Elena nodded gratefully, bundling Lily toward a waiting bus that wheezed into the lot. As they boarded, Jack watched the rain-slicked windows, the girl's face pressed against the glass, waving. The bus pulled away, leaving only the echo of tires on wet road. He sat there a moment longer, the engine idling like a heartbeat. Back home, Sarah would be waiting, her own questions bubbling up. "Dad, can you play?" She'd asked him just last week, pulling an old acoustic from the closet. He'd brushed it off then, the strings too dusty, the notes too tangled with the past. But now, as the highway stretched out before him, dust kicking up in the rear view, Jack felt the first pull of something unspoken, a thread connecting strangers, a song waiting to be sung. The Iron Hawks rode for protection, for the ones society overlooked. And in that simple exchange, amid the diner's hum and the fading rain, Jack wondered if this was the start of keeping that promise to more than just his brothers. The road whispered on, carrying secrets in its endless curve. The highway blurred into a ribbon of gray under the afternoon sky, the sun dipping low enough to paint the desert in bruised purples and golds. Jack Harlan leaned into the wind, his Harley cutting through the dry air like a knife, the vibration thrumming up his arms and settling in his chest. He'd left the diner behind an hour ago, but Lily's question lingered like exhaust smoke. Innocent, insistent. "Dad, can you play?" Sarah had said the same words, her small fingers plucking at his sleeve, eyes wide with that unfiltered hope only kids could muster. He'd changed the subject then, as he always did, burying the guitar deeper in the closet. Music was a ghost he'd outrun, or so he thought. Now, with the road pulling him toward home, it clawed its way back. Mile marker 47 loomed ahead, a weathered signpost half buried in sagebrush. This was Hawk territory, a stretch of Nevada backcountry where the Iron Hawks claimed their ground, not with fences or deeds, but with the unspoken pact of riders who'd shared too many miles. Jack slowed as the landscape shifted, the flat highway giving way to a dirt track flanked by Joshua trees, their twisted arms reaching like forgotten prayers. Up ahead, smoke curled from a cluster of tents and bikes, the low murmur of voices carrying on the breeze. The campfire sign he'd mentioned, a crude hawk silhouette burned into plywood, leaned against a rock, catching the fading light. He killed the engine at the edge of the gathering, the sudden silence amplifying the crackle of flames and the distant howl of a coyote. Brothers emerged from the shadows. Tommy, the wiry veteran with a prosthetic leg from Nam, wiping grease from his hands on a rag. Marco, broad-shouldered and quiet, nursing a beer by the fire, and Lena, the only woman in the core group, her tattooed arms crossed as she sharpened a knife with rhythmic scrapes. They weren't a gang in the outlaw sense. No runs for territory, no vendettas etched in blood. The Hawks were survivors, patched together from broken lives, ex-soldiers, factory cast-offs, men and women who'd found family when blood ties frayed. Jack had joined 15 years back, after the divorce, when the open road felt like the only confession he could make. "Harlan," Tommy called, his voice gravel over glass from too many smokes. He limped forward, clapping Jack on the shoulder with a grip that spoke of battles unspoken. "Thought you were solo today. Road treat you right." Jack nodded, swinging his leg off the bike and accepting a cold bottle from Marco. The label peeled under his thumb, condensation cool against his skin. "Clean run. Stopped at Rita's. Poured for a couple strays. Mom and kid head into the city." He didn't mention the extra bills or the invitation. Trust was the Hawks' currency, doled out sparingly. Lena eyed him from across the fire, her dark hair tied back, flames dancing in her eyes. She'd lost a brother to the bottle years ago, turned to the road for the same anchor Jack sought. "Strays, huh? You always picking up litters. What's eatin' you tonight? Look like you swallowed a storm." The group settled around the pit, the fire's warmth pushing back the encroaching chill. Logs popped, sending sparks skyward like fleeting stars. Jack stared into the flames, the heat blurring the edges of memory. 16 years. It felt like a lifetime, or maybe yesterday. The CEO, Alexander Voss, had been a ghost in a suit back then, commissioning a song for his wife on their anniversary. Jack had been a session musician in L.A., scraping by on gigs in smoke-filled bars, his fingers raw from strings and regret. Voss had heard one of his demos, liked the raw ache in the lyrics, paid enough to keep Jack afloat for months. The song, Neon Promises, became a quiet hit, whispered in wedding toasts and late-night radios. But fame soured it. Voss took credit in the liner notes, and Jack walked away, the payout a bitter echo. He hadn't touched music since. Not after Sarah's mom left, taking the light with her. The guitar gathered dust, a relic of vulnerability he couldn't afford. "Kid asked if I play," Jack said finally, voice low, the words tumbling out like stones from a pocket. "Reminded me of Sarah, and older stuff." Marco leaned forward, his face shadowed, the firelight carving deep lines around his mouth. He'd been the one to drag Jack into the Hawks after a bar fight gone wrong, protected him when the law circled like vultures. "Sarah's pushing you again? Girl's got your fire. Play for her, man. Ain't no shame in it." The conversation drifted, tales of the road weaving through the night. Tommy's yarn about a dust storm in Arizona that buried a rig hole. Lena's quiet account of patching up a drifter with a busted arm. Laughter rumbled, low and genuine, cutting the isolation of their lives. But Jack's mind wandered back to the diner, to Elena's strained smile, and Lily's bear, clutched like a shield. What if they showed? Strangers in Hawk space. Risky, but the code held, protect the overlooked, no questions. As the fire died to embers, A distant rumble pierced the quiet. Engines, multiple, approaching slow. Headlights pierced the dark, sweeping the track like search beams. Tommy stood first, hand drifting to his belt. Habit from darker days. Jack rose too, heart steady but alert. The bikes pulled up, 3 in total, riders dismounting with the weariness of long hauls. Not rivals. The patches caught the glow. Lone wolves, maybe, seeking shelter. But it wasn't them. From the lead bike, Elena slid off, Lily in tow, the girl's eyes wide at the sight of the fire. She'd changed into a clean sweater, but the backpack hung heavy, zipped tight now. We made it, Elena said, voice tentative, stepping forward with Lily's hand in hers. The bus broke down a few miles back. Mechanic said it'd be hours. I remembered your sign. The Hawks exchanged glances, a silent vote passing in nods and shifts. Tommy relaxed, gesturing to the fire. Plenty of room. Sit. We got stew on. Lily's gaze locked on Jack, that same piercing curiosity from the diner. She tugged Elena's sleeve, whispering loud enough to Carrie. Mom, ask him. The music man. Elena's cheeks colored, but she met Jack's eyes. A flicker of gratitude mixed with something deeper. Recognition? No. Impossible. She won't let it go, if it's no trouble. Jack felt the weight settle, the past and present colliding in the fire's glow. He hadn't played in years, but the embers stirred. Marco fetched the old acoustic from his saddlebag, always carried it, a talisman against the silence. The group quieted, the night holding its breath. Jack took the instrument, fingers tracing the familiar curve, strings humming faintly under his touch. The first notes came hesitant, a melody born of dust and longing, echoing the song he'd written long ago for a man who had everything but heart. As the chords filled the air, Lily sat cross-legged, bare in lap, her face alight. Elena watched, her expression softening, a tear tracing silently down her cheek. In that moment, amid the crackle and the stars, Jack played. Not for the CEO's forgotten promise, but for the girl who asked, and the daughter waiting at home. The road had brought them here, weaving threads of kindness through the leather and chrome. But unspoken, in the shadows of the fire, Elena's hand trembled on her knee, as if the music unlocked a door she'd long sealed shut. The notes hung in the night air, fragile at first, like threads of smoke unraveling from the dying fire. Jack's fingers moved over the strings with a hesitation, born of rust and reluctance. The acoustic's wood warm against his palm, scarred from years of wrenches and handlebars. The melody he chose wasn't Neon Promises. That one stayed buried, a ghost too raw to summon. But something simpler, an old folk tune the Hawks sang on long rides, words about wandering souls finding harbor in the storm. Lily leaned forward, her bear propped on her knees, the firelight flickering across her face like a secret being told. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, mirrored the innocence Jack had once seen in Sarah's gaze, before the divorce carved silences between them. Elena sat beside her daughter, knees drawn up, arms wrapped around them as if holding herself together. The stew Tommy had ladled into tin bowls, steamed untouched in her lap, the rich scent of venison and herbs mingling with the sharp tang of pine smoke. She didn't speak, but her breathing steadied with the rhythm of the guitar, a subtle rise and fall that betrayed the weightlifting, if only for a moment. The other Hawks watched without intrusion, Marco nodding along, his calloused fingers tapping a silent beat on his knee, Lena's knife forgotten in her hand, her sharp features softened by the glow. Tommy leaned back against a log, prosthetic leg extended, his eyes distant, as if the music pulled him back to rice paddies and letters from home he'd never sent. Jack's voice joined the chords midway, low and gravelly, not polished like the studio takes of his youth, but honest, scraped from the chest. The road don't care for your name or your fight. It just rolls on through the endless night. The words felt like confession, each one loosening the knot in his throat. He hadn't realized how tight it was until now, how the silence of the road had become a cage for the songs inside him. Lily swayed gently, humming off-key, her small voice weaving into his like a counterpoint. For a heartbeat, the gathering felt less like a pit stop and more like sanctuary, a circle of outcasts bound by the quiet vow to shield what the world discarded. As the last chord faded, the night seemed to exhale. Embers popped softly, and a breeze stirred the sagebrush, carrying the faint, metallic scent of rain on the horizon. Lily clapped, her hands muffled against the bear's fur, breaking the spell. "That was pretty, mister. Like my dad used to sing. Can you teach me?" Her question sliced clean. No guile, just the pure want of a child bridging gaps adults fumbled. Jack set the guitar aside, the neck leaning against his boot like an old friend reluctant to leave. He met her eyes, seeing not just curiosity, but a hunger for something solid in the flux of her life. The bus breakdowns, the hurried meals, the absences that left echoes. "Maybe tomorrow, kid, if you're sticking around." He glanced at Elena, who managed a nod, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. Gratitude shone there, but shadowed by something else, a flicker of recognition that made Jack's pulse quicken. Had he seen her before? In a bar crowd, a passing glance on the highway? No. It was the music, he told himself. It stirred ghosts in everyone. Elena cleared her throat, setting the bowl down with a soft clink. "Thank you, really. It's been a while since I've heard anything like that." Her voice was steady now, but her hands trembled as she smoothed Lily's hair, tucking a stray pigtail behind her ear. The gesture was tender, automatic, yet laced with a sorrow that hung heavier than the desert chill. Lily's dad. He played too. Before the accident. Music was his way of holding us together. The words landed like stones in still water, rippling through the group. Tommy shifted, his rag twisting in his grip, a silent acknowledgement of losses shared. Marco passed Elena a fresh bottle of water, no words needed. The Hawks moved like that, reading the unspoken currents. Jack felt it too, the pull of her story mirroring his own fractures. Sarah's mom had taken the records when she left, the ones Jack had spun on lazy Sundays, filling the house with melodies that promised forever. Now, the quiet in his home was a different kind of music, one of creaking floorboards and unanswered pleas. "You headed far?" Lena asked, her tone casual but probing, the knife back in her pocket as she stirred the fire with a stick. Sparks danced upward, mirroring the stars pricking the velvet sky. Elena hesitated, glancing at the darkened track where their bus had stranded them. "Reno, eventually. Job interview. Secretary for some big firm, if I make it by morning." She forced a smile, but it cracked at the edges, revealing the fragility beneath. Lily yawned, nestling against her mom's side, the bear a soft barrier between her and the unknown. The invitation to the fire had been a lifeline, but Dawn would demand they move, debts and dreams pulling like chains. Jack stood, the gravel crunching under his boots, and fetched a blanket from his saddlebag, faded wool, smelling of oil and open air. He draped it over Lily without a word, tucking it around her shoulders. The act was small, unremarkable to outsiders who might see only leather and suspicion. But to the Hawks, it was the code in motion. Protect the vulnerable. No ledger kept. Elena's eyes met his again, and this time the recognition sharpened, not in her features, but in the way she whispered, almost to herself. Neon Promises. That's what he called his favorite song. The name hit Jack like a skid on black ice. 16 years melted away in that utterance, the sterile studio in L.A., the CEO's polished handshake, the lyrics he'd poured out for a love Voss claimed as his own. Alexander Voss, the man who'd built an empire on borrowed heart, crediting himself in the shadows of the album. Jack's song, twisted into a radio staple, funding Voss's boardrooms while Jack faded into the margins. How could she know? Elena's face paled, as if she'd spoken a forbidden truth, her hand flying to her mouth. Lily stirred, murmuring in her sleep, oblivious to the fracture widening. The fire crackled on, indifferent, as the group fell into a watchful quiet. Jack's mind raced, piecing fragments. The CEO's wife, the anniversary tale Voss had spun during that one meeting, a woman with dark hair and a laugh like breaking glass. Elena? It couldn't be. But the tremor in her voice, the way the melody had unlocked her tears, it wove a thread back through the years, connecting diner strays to a past he'd revved away from. The road, once a straight escape, now curved with revelations, demanding he face the music he'd silenced. In the hush, as shadows lengthened, Jack picked up the guitar again, strumming softly, not to fill the silence but to honor it. The Hawks listened, their loyalty a steady hum beneath the notes, a brotherhood that saw beyond the leather to the man unraveling. Elena watched, her secret teetering on the edge of confession, the night holding them all in its somber embrace. Comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far these stories of courage and loyalty can travel. The fire's embers glowed like dying coals in a miner's eye, casting elongated shadows that danced across the faces gathered in the circle. Jack's fingers lingered on the guitar strings, the soft strums fading into the night's hush, but the air thrummed with unspoken weight. Elena's words, neon promises, hung there, a spark that threatened to ignite the quiet. She sat frozen, her hand still pressed to her lips, eyes wide in the firelight, reflecting the flicker of regret. Lily slept soundly against her, the blanket rising and falling with the child's even breaths, oblivious to the fracture her mother's slip had cracked open. Jack set the instrument down gently, the wood scraping faintly against the log, his heart pounding a rhythm more insistent than any chord. 16 years. The name of that song had been locked away, a vault he'd sealed after the betrayal, the way Voss had smiled in that glass-walled office, promising collaboration, only to etch his own name on the credits like a thief claiming found treasure. Jack had walked out with cash in his pocket and silence in his soul, trading melodies for the roar of engines, the Hawks' brotherhood his new refrain. But now, here in the desert's embrace, with the scent of cooling earth and charred wood thick in the air, the past clawed free. "You know it," he said finally, his voice a low rumble, not accusatory but probing, like testing the weight of a chain before pulling. The other Hawks shifted subtly, Tommy's prosthetic creaking as he adjusted his stance, Marco's beer bottle pausing midway to his lips, Lena's eyes narrowing in the shadows, her loyalty a silent guard. They didn't pry. That wasn't their way. But they sensed the shift, the way the night had thickened with secrets. Elena's gaze dropped to the ground, where pebbles glinted like scattered stars. She pulled Lily closer, the girl's warmth a shield against the chill seeping in. It's nothing. Just a song. Old radio favorite." But her voice wavered, the lie thin as the smoke curling upward. The fire popped, sending a spark skittering toward her boot, and she flinched, as if it burned deeper than skin. Jack leaned forward, elbows on knees, the leather of his vest creaking softly. The desert wind whispered through the Joshua trees, carrying the faint, acrid tang of distant rain. He'd seen that look before, in Sarah's mother, the night she packed her bags, eyes darting like a cornered animal, in his own reflection after the divorce, when the house echoed with absence. Elena wasn't just a stray on the road. She carried a story that mirrored his fractures, twisting them into something shared. Kid said her dad sang like that, before the accident. He echoed her earlier words, gentle but insistent, drawing the thread tighter. She swallowed, the sound audible in the stillness, her throat working against the knot of memory. The group waited, the Hawks code holding space without demand. Protect, listen, let the truth surface like groundwater in dry earth. Finally, Elena exhaled, a shaky breath that misted in the cooling air. The accident. It was years ago. Car wreck on the interstate. He didn't make it. Her fingers traced Lily's sleeping form, a tremor running through them, like leaves in a breeze. But before that, he was. Everything. A dreamer in a suit. Worked for this big-shot CEO, Alexander Voss. The kind of man who built towers from nothing, but lost sight of the people holding them up. Voss. The name landed like a dropped wrench, clanging through Jack's mind. Alexander Voss, the polished exec with a voice like oiled gears, who'd hired him for that anniversary gift, spinning tales of eternal love for his wife while his empire chewed through lives like fuel. Jack's jaw tightened, the old bitterness rising, sharp as battery acid. But Elena's eyes, rimmed with unshed tears, softened the edge. He wrote songs in his spare time, she continued, voice gaining a fragile strength. But Voss, he saw potential. Commissioned one for our anniversary. Neon Promises. Said it'd be our forever. But Voss twisted it, took the credit, turned it into his own shine. My husband never fought back. Just kept working, kept dreaming, until the road took him. The revelation settled over the fire like ash, graying the warmth. Marco let out a low whistle, barely audible, his face etched with the quiet fury of shared injustice. Tommy nodded slowly, his veteran scars invisible but felt, a reminder that some battles left deeper marks than bullets. Lena reached over, placing a hand on Elena's shoulder. Brief, solid, the touch of sisterhood forged in hardship. Jack stared into the embers, seeing flashes. The studio's fluorescent hum, Voss's signature on the contract, the check that bought silence but not peace. And now, this woman, Voss's wife, ex-wife, broken on the same road that had carried him away from it all. Why Reno? Jack asked, piecing it together, his tone steady despite the storm inside. The moral pull tugged at him. Turn away, let the past bury itself, or step into the fray for a stranger whose pain echoed his own. The Hawks embodied that choice. Loyalty beyond blood, justice in the margins where lawmen feared to tread. Elena wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, the gesture raw, smudging faint dirt from the day's travel. Voss is firm. He's still there, top floor, glass walls overlooking the city he owns. Lily needs stability, school, a home. I thought if I could get a job there, prove I wasn't just the widow he discarded after the funeral, after he said the song was his legacy, not ours, maybe. Her voice trailed, choked by the enormity, the single mother's quiet war against erasure. Lily stirred then, murmuring in her sleep, Daddy's song. The words pierced sharper than any blade, pulling Jack from his reverie. He thought of Sarah, waiting at home, her own pleas for music a bridge he hadn't crossed. The Brotherhood's code hummed beneath it all. No one hurts those we protect. Voss had stolen more than credit. He'd orphaned a melody, left echoes in lives like Elena's. Jack stood, the gravel shifting under his boots, and extended a hand to help her up. Dawn's comin'. Hawk's got a truck, Tommy's rig. We'll get you to Reno. No strings. Elena's eyes searched his, finding not pity but resolve, the kind born of roads traveled alone too long. She nodded, accepting the hand, her grip firm despite the tremble. The group moved with purpose, blankets folded, embers kicked over, engines stirring like awakening beasts. As the first gray light bled across the horizon, painting the desert in muted silvers, Jack mounted his Harley, Elena, and Lily climbing into the truck behind Tommy. The convoy rolled out, dust rising in veils, the highway curving toward confrontation. But in the rear view, Jack glimpsed Elena's face, set with a determination that mirrored his own awakening. The song he'd written wasn't just notes on a page. It was a thread binding them, biker, widow, child, in a tapestry of redemption. The road ahead promised tension, a reckoning with the man who'd built walls around hearts. But for the first time in years, Jack felt the pull not to flee, but to ride toward it. The wind carried the faint echo of strings, a promise unspoken, as loyalty forged in fire guided them on. The city skyline loomed like a jagged scar against the dawn, Reno's lights flickering out one by one as the sun clawed its way over the Sierra Nevada. Jack rode point on his Harley, the engine's steady growl cutting through the morning haze. The convoy trailing behind, Tommy's battered truck rumbling with Elena and Lily inside, Marco and Lena flanking on their bikes like silent guardians. The desert had given way to urban sprawl, the air shifting from dry sage to the metallic tang of exhaust and coffee from corner vendors. Jack's hands gripped the handlebars tighter, the leather gloves creaking as the weight of the night pressed on him. Elena's confession had unraveled threads he'd long severed, binding him to a reckoning he hadn't sought. Voss. The name evoked boardrooms and betrayals, a man who'd polished stolen light into gold, while lives like Jack's crumbled in the shadows. They pulled into a shadowed lot behind a nondescript motel on the edge of town, the kind of place where neon buzzed faintly, and curtains hung limp against prying eyes. The truck's brakes sighed as Tommy parked, dust settling in lazy clouds. Elena emerged first, Lily rubbing sleep from her eyes, the bear tucked under her arm like a talisman. The girl's face lit at the sight of the bikes, but her excitement dimmed when Elena knelt to whisper instructions, her voice a hushed murmur against the waking street. "Stay close, sweetie. Mommy's gotta do this quick." Jack killed his engine, the sudden quiet amplifying the distant honk of traffic and the low hum of a vending machine. He swung off the bike, boots hitting pavement with a solid thud, and approached slowly, giving Elena space to gather herself. Her sweater was rumpled from the ride, dark hair escaping its ponytail, but her jaw set with a resolve that mirrored the desert's unyielding rock. "The firm's downtown," she said, not meeting his eyes at first, her fingers twisting the strap of her backpack. "Interview's at 9. I can walk from here, don't want to drag you all into." Tommy cut her off with a nod toward the truck. "Keys are yours till noon. Gas is full. We'll wait." His tone brooked no argument, the veteran's steady gaze conveying the hawk's unspoken pact. See it through, no half measures. Marco and Lena dismounted, stretching in the cool air, their presence a quiet wall against the city's indifferent rush. Lena handed Elena a thermos of coffee, steam curling like a fragile promise. Black, like the road, clears the head. Gratitude flickered in Elena's eyes, softening the edges of her fear. But Jack saw the tremor in her hand as she accepted it, a silent admission of the storm inside. Lily tugged at her mom's leg, peering up at Jack with that piercing curiosity. "Are you coming too, Music Man? To hear the tall buildings sing?" The question hung innocent, slicing through the tension, reminding him of Sarah's voice on phone calls, small and insistent amid the static. He crouched to her level, the scent of exhaust and morning dew sharp in his nostrils. "Not today, kid, but I'll be right here when you're back. Got a new tune brewing." The words came easier now, the guitar's ghost lingering in his fingertips, stirring embers he'd thought cold. Lily beamed, hugging her bear tighter, and scampered to the truck's cab, leaving Elena and Jack in a pocket of quiet. She finally met his gaze, the firelight's warmth replaced by the harsh morning glare bouncing off windshields. "Last night, I didn't mean to unload like that. Voss, he's not just a boss. After the accident, he cut me off. Said the firm had no room for distractions. The song was supposed to be ours. My husband's gift. Something pure. But Voss, he claimed it. Used it for his image. left us with nothing but echoes." Her voice cracked on the last word, a tear tracing a path down her cheek, quick and unbidden. Jack's chest tightened, the moral fork sharpening. Walk away, let her face the lion's den alone, or ride in as the shadow she needed, risking the hawk's fragile peace with a man who wielded power like a blade. "I know Voss," Jack said, the admission heavy, like gravel in his throat. He stood, the city noise swelling around them, horns blaring, a siren wailing in the distance. "More than you think. That song. It was mine. He bought it for his wife, back when I scraped by on gigs, stole the soul, slapped his name on it. Neon Promises wasn't for boardrooms. It was for nights like the ones you describe." The revelation settled between them, raw and unpolished, his isolation cracking under the weight of shared theft. Elena's eyes widened, not in shock, but recognition, piecing the puzzle of a stranger who'd unknowingly penned her husband's lullaby. Before she could respond, Lily called from the truck, waving impatiently. Elena nodded, steeling herself, and climbed in. The engine coughed to life, Tommy at the wheel now, guiding them toward the glittering towers downtown. Jack watched them go, the truck merging into traffic like a ship into fog, Marco and Lena mounting up to shadow from a distance. He lit a cigarette, the flame flaring brief and orange, smoke curling toward the overcast sky threatening rain. The weight gnawed at him, introspection pulling him back to Sarah, her last letter tucked in his vest, scrawled with pleas for stories of the road, for the father who'd traded strings for chrome. Helping Elena wasn't just compassion, it was redemption's first note, a harmony for the silences he'd left. Hours stretched, the sun climbing to midday, baking the lot in relentless heat. Jack paced, the pavement radiating warmth through his boots, mind replaying the night's melodies against Voss's empire. Then, the truck reappeared, weaving through cars with urgent haste. Elena burst out before it stopped fully, face ashen, Lily clutching her hand, eyes wide with confusion. "He saw me," Elena gasped, breath ragged, the thermos forgotten on the dash. "Voss, in the lobby, recognized the name, pulled strings to tank the interview, said I'd never work there, not after complicating his life." Her hands shook, fists clenching against the injustice, tears held back by sheer will. Tommy emerged, jaw set, while Marco revved his bike in solidarity, the sound a low thunder. Jack stepped forward, the cigarette crushed under his heel, rage simmering contained beneath the surface, a quiet fury forged in brotherhood. Where is he now? The question hung, moral suspense coiling tight. Confront the thief in his tower, risk escalation for a widow's justice, or pull back, preserving the Hawk's code from urban snares. Elena pointed toward the skyline, the tallest spire gleaming like a false promise. "Top floor, but Jack, it's not worth it." "Lily..." The girl looked up, voice small but steady. "Dad would want you to play, Mom. Make it right." The words ignited something deep, Jack's hand drifting to where the guitar would be, if he carried it. The convoy reformed, engines humming with purpose. The city no longer indifferent, but a battlefield of shadows. As they rolled toward the heart of Reno, rain finally breaking in scattered drops on the windshield, Jack felt the evolution settle. From lone rider to protector, compassion fueling the ride toward confrontation. The road curved into the unknown, loyalty's hum drowning doubt, promising a chorus of reckoning under the neon haze. Rain pattered against the windshields like hesitant fingers on glass, blurring the Reno streets into a watercolor of grays and silvers. Jack led the convoy through the tightening veins of downtown, his Harley's tires slicing wet asphalt, the engine's pulse a steady counterpoint to the storm's murmur. The towers rose around them, monoliths of steel and ambition, their windows reflecting fractured skies. Voss's building loomed at the end of the block, a sleek spire piercing the clouds, its lobby a cavern of marble and muted light, guarded by doormen in crisp uniforms who eyed the approaching bikes with thinly veiled disdain. Jack eased off the throttle, the growl softening to a rumble, as Tommy's truck pulled alongside. Elena's face pale against the passenger window, Lily's small form buckled safely behind. He killed the ignition first, the sudden silence amplifying the rain's tattoo on helmets and hoods. Water beaded on his leather vest, trickling cold down his neck. But he felt none of it. Only the coil of tension in his gut, moral wires crossing like exposed circuits. Confront Voss here, in his kingdom of glass and contracts, meant risking more than a scuffle. It was a line drawn in the sand, the Hawk's quiet justice clashing against the world's polished machinery. Elena stepped out, umbrella forgotten, her sweater darkening with damp spots as she shielded Lily with her body. The girl's eyes darted upward, wide at the building's scale. Her bear clutched tight against the chill. "Is the bad man up there, Mom?" she whispered, voice cutting through the downpour like a fragile note. Elena knelt, rain matting her hair, her hand cupping Lily's cheek with a tenderness that spoke of too many storms weathered alone. "He's not bad, sweetie. Just lost his way, like in the songs." But her eyes, meeting Jack's over the child's head, betrayed the lie, the raw ache of betrayal. The years of silence after the accident, when Voss had sealed her out like a footnote in his ledger. Jack's chest tightened, memories surfacing unbidden. The studio session, Voss's laugh echoing off soundproof walls as he hummed along, claiming the lyrics as inspiration from his own perfect marriage. Jack had believed it then, a paycheck for a starving artist's soul. Now, seeing Elena's trembling resolve, it twisted into something sharper, a theft not just of credit, but of lives unraveled. Tommy emerged from the truck, his limp more pronounced on the slick pavement, rain sheeting off his jacket. He placed a steady hand on Elena's shoulder, the gesture brotherly, forged in the Hawk's unyielding code. "We got your back. No one's going in alone." Marco and Lena flanked them, engines ticking as they cooled, their presence a wall of quiet solidarity, outcasts turned sentinels, the Brotherhood's loyalty a hum beneath the city's roar. Jack nodded, the decision settling like wet gravel under boots. Isolation had been his armor for years, the road a solo confession. But here, with Elena's hand slipping into Lily's, and the rain washing away pretenses, compassion pulled him forward, a redemption arc bending toward confrontation. They moved as a unit toward the lobby doors, which hissed open on sensors, spilling warm air scented with polished floors and faint cologne. The doorman stiffened, his gaze sweeping the group. Leather, grease-streaked faces, the child's wide eyes a stark contrast. "Private building, appointments only." His voice was clipped, authority laced with unease, the kind society reserved for those who rolled in on chrome instead of sedans. Elena stepped forward, chin lifted, water dripping from her sleeves. "I'm here to see Mr. Voss. Tell him Elena's waiting." The name carried weight, a ghost from his past, and the doorman's eyes flickered with recognition, or calculation. He murmured into a discreet earpiece, the lobby's hush broken only by the patter outside and the distant ding of an elevator. Moments stretched, tension coiling like a spring, Jack's hand flexing at his side, not in threat, but readiness, the moral suspense hanging heavy. Would Voss dismiss her again, or face the echo of his theft? The elevator doors parted, and a suited aide emerged, slick as the rain-slicked streets, his smile professional, but tight. "Mrs. Harlan, Voss, he's expecting you, alone." The slip of the name, Harlan, jolted Jack, a puzzle piece snapping into place. Elena's maiden name? Or something deeper? She glanced back, hesitation etching lines around her mouth. But Lily's small hand in hers steadied her. "Wait here," she whispered to Jack, the plea unspoken but clear. "Be the anchor when the waves hit." As she followed the aide upward, The lobby closed around the Hawks like a judgmental eye. Passers-by in suits averting gazes, whispers rippling like the rain outside. Tommy settled on a bench, prosthetic leg extended, his calm a deliberate counter to the polished frenzy. Marco scanned the exits, ever the sentinel, while Lena knelt to Lily's level, distracting her with tales of desert rides, her voice a soft cadence against the marble echo. Your mom's strong, kid. Like the Hawks, we soar through storms. Jack paced near the doors, rain fogging the glass, introspection pulling him inward. Sarah's face flickered in his mind, her last request. Dad, can you play? A melody unfinished. Helping Elena wasn't vengeance. It was mending the frayed edges of his own silence. The song he'd lost to Voss now a bridge to this fractured family. Minutes bled into eternity, the elevator's chime finally breaking the wait. Elena descended, face drained but eyes alight with something fierce, Justice's quiet spark. He listened, she said, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Admitted it. The song, the lies, offered a settlement, a job. But more. Said Lily could have the royalties we'd never seen. Tears welled, not of defeat but release, her arms wrapping around the girl as Lily beamed, sensing this shift without words. Voss hadn't crumbled, but the confrontation had cracked his facade, the CEO's empire yielding to the human cost he'd ignored. The group spilled back into the rain, lighter now, a drizzle softening the edges. Tommy clapped Jack on the back, the Brotherhood's nod of approval, while Marco revved his bike in celebration, the sound muffled by the wet air. As they mounted up, Elena pausing to squeeze Jack's arm, gratitude raw, a connection forged in vulnerability. Lily tugged at his vest. Play for us now, the happy song. Jack smiled, faint but genuine, the evolution complete. From shadowed rider to guardian of melodies lost and found. The convoy pulled away, rain washing the streets clean, the road ahead curving toward home, redemption humming in the engine's song. Voss's tower receded in the mirrors, a symbol toppled not by force, but by the unyielding heart of those on the margins. If this story already has your heart, hit the like button. It helps the story of Jack Harlan reach more people who still believe in humanity. The rain had eased to a fine mist by the time the convoy cleared Reno's sprawl, the highway unfurling westward like a ribbon soaked in silver. Jack rode at the rear now, letting Tommy's truck lead with Elena and Lily inside, the Harley's steady thrum vibrating through his bones, grounding the whirlwind in his chest. Water sluiced off his helmet in rivulets, carrying the city's metallic bite away, replaced by the clean, sharp scent of wet sage rolling in from the desert. The confrontation lingered like exhaust. Voss's office, high above the streets, with its panoramic views that felt more like a cage than a throne. The CEO had sat behind a desk of polished walnut, tie loosened just enough to feign humility, his admission spilling out in measured tones. The song's origins, the credit he'd usurped, the royalties siphoned into his empire while Elena scraped by on fragments of memory. Jack's gloved hands tightened on the grips, the leather creaking softly. He'd stayed in the lobby with Lily during the summit, her small hand in his as they watched rain streak the glass, her questions tumbling like pebbles. Why's the tall man sorry now? Did he forget the words? He'd answered as best he could, voice low amid the lobby's hush, drawing on the Hawk's quiet wisdom. No grand speeches, just truths carved from hard miles. Upstairs, Elena had faced Voss alone, her voice steady as she laid out the years of silence. The accident's shadow, Lily's needs unmet. No shouts, no shattered glass. Just the weight of unspoken debt settling like dust after a storm. Voss had written the check on the spot. Back pay, a position in the firm, even a trust for Lily's future. Not out of kindness, Jack suspected, but the prick of conscience when the overlooked pushed back. Marco rode beside him, their bikes syncing in rhythm, the wind whipping between them. Lena trailed further back, her headlight a steady beacon in the mirrors. The Brotherhood moved as one, their loyalty a silent engine, propelling them beyond the margins where society drew lines. Jack glanced at the truck ahead, Elena's silhouette visible through the rear window, her posture easing for the first time since the diner. Shoulders unclenched, a hand occasionally reaching to stroke Lily's hair. The girl pressed her face to the glass now and then, waving at the bikes, her bear propped on the dash like a co-pilot. That innocence pierced Jack deeper than Voss's calculated remorse. It echoed Sarah's laughter from phone calls, the way she'd beg for road tales, her voice a lifeline across the miles. As the sun dipped lower, gilding the horizon in muted golds, they pulled off at a rest stop carved into the hillside. A cluster of picnic tables under ramadas, the air humming with the distant call of ravens. Engines sighed to quiet, and the group dismounted, steam rising from damp leathers as they stretched in the fading light. Tommy killed the truck's motor, the hood ticking like a cooling heartbeat, and Elena stepped out, Lily bounding after her, sneakers splashing in shallow puddles. The girl's cheeks were flushed from the warmth inside, her eyes bright with the day's adventure. "We won, didn't we, Mom? Like in the stories, the good guys ride away happy." Elena knelt, pulling her close, the mist beating on their lashes like unshed tears. "Something like that, sweetie." Her voice carried a new timbre, laced with relief, but underscored by the ache of what-ifs. The husband lost, the song reclaimed too late. She rose, meeting Jack's gaze across the gravel, a silent current passing between them. Gratitude, yes, but deeper. A shared unraveling, the past's threads weaving them into something unforeseen. "I don't know how to thank you. All of you. That building. It was a wall I'd stared at for years. Today, it cracked." Jack shrugged, the motion casual but his eyes holding hers, the weight of introspection settling. "Hawks don't do walls. We ride through 'em." He pulled a thermos from his saddlebag, leftover coffee, black and strong, and passed it over, their fingers brushing in the exchange, a fleeting warmth against the chill. Lily tugged at his pant leg, looking up with that unfiltered plea. "Music Man. Play now? The one about promises. Mom says it's ours." The request landed soft but insistent, stirring the embers Jack had fanned back to life around the campfire. He hadn't brought the guitar, Marco's old acoustic left behind in the rush, but the melody rose unbidden, his voice filling the space as he hummed the opening bars of Neon Promises. The words came halting at first, gravelly from disuse, but true. "Under the neon sky, I wrote your name in the dust, promises flickering like stars we couldn't trust." Elena joined in quietly, her tone fragile, harmonizing on the chorus, Lily swaying between them, her small voice piping along. The Hawks gathered loosely, Tommy leaning against the truck, eyes distant with his own ghosts. Marco nodding approval, a faint smile cracking his stoic mask. Lena watching the horizon, her knife idle in her pocket. As the song faded, the rest stop felt transformed, the mist lifting to reveal a sky bruised with twilight. Elena wiped her eyes, not hiding the tears this time, and placed a hand on Jack's arm. "My husband, Tom, he hummed that every night, said it was our anthem. Voss took more than credit, he took the heart of it, but hearing you sing it, it's like giving it back." The late revelation bloomed there, in the quiet admission. Tom hadn't just worked for Voss. He'd been the bridge, the dreamer who'd inspired the lyrics in Stolen Moments, sharing fragments with Jack during that long-ago session. Voss had woven their lives into his theft, a web now untangling under the open sky. Jack nodded, the pieces settling, his isolation fracturing further. Sarah's face swam in his mind again, her request. "Dad, can you play?" No longer a burden but a call to bridge his own silences. Helping Elena had awakened that in him, the biker's tough shell yielding to the man beneath. compassion forging redemption one note at a time. "Rhodes got a way of circling back," he said, voice low. "You and Lily, head home steady. Hawks'll check in." She smiled, genuine now, the weight lifting like fog burned off by dawn. Lily hugged his leg fiercely, bear and all, before clambering back into the truck. As the convoy reformed, engines humming to life under the emerging stars, Jack felt the emotional turn complete. A slow evolution from shadowed rider to guardian of lost melodies. The highway stretched ahead, curving toward his own doorstep, where Sarah waited, guitar strings dusty but ready. Loyalty's quiet hum carried them on, the Brotherhood's justice a whisper against the wind, proving that even in the margins, hearts could reclaim their song. The stars wheeled overhead like scattered notes on a vast silent score, the highway's hum fading as the convoy crested the final rise toward Jack's small town. The desert's edge blurred into familiar scrubland, the air cooling to a crisp bite that carried hints of pine from the distant hills. Jack rode last, the Harley's lights cutting a path through the gathering dark, his mind replaying the day's echoes, the rain-slicked confrontation in Reno, Elena's voice cracking with reclaimed strength, Lily's small hand waving from the truck's window as they parted ways at the state line. The Hawks had peeled off one by one, Tommy's rig rumbling toward his garage, Marco and Lena vanishing into the night with nods that spoke of bonds unbroken. Now, alone with the road's whisper, Jack felt the pull of home, a gravity he'd resisted too long. The house came into view just past midnight, a squat ranch style on the outskirts, its porch light a lone beacon against the black. Gravel crunched under tires as he parked, the engine's sigh mirroring his own exhale. Sarah's bedroom window glowed faintly, a silhouette moving behind the curtain, awake, waiting, her intuition sharper than any radar. Jack swung off the bike, helmet tucked under his arm, the chill seeping through his vest as he climbed the steps. The door creaked open, hinges protesting the late hour, and there she was, 12 years old, all gangly limbs and tousled hair, wrapped in an old blanket that smelled of laundry soap and childhood. "Dad?" Her voice was sleep-thick but eager, eyes searching his face in the dim hall light. The living room beyond was a time capsule, faded couch, stacks of road maps on the coffee table, the guitar case in the corner like a sealed letter. Sarah had dragged it out again, he saw, the latches undone, strings glinting faintly. "You're back early. Was the run okay? Tell me about the stars. They're different out there, right?" Jack set his helmet down, the thud soft on the scarred wood floor, and pulled her into a hug, her head tucking under his chin. She smelled of shampoo and the faint vanilla of bedtime stories, a scent that pierced the road's dust from his skin. "Stars are the same everywhere, kiddo. Just look different depending on who's watching." He held her a beat longer, the weight of the miles settling, compassion's quiet fire warming the spaces silence had carved. Elena's tears, Lily's plea. They'd mirrored this. A father's duty not in grand gestures but in showing up, melody or not. Sarah pulled back, her gaze flicking to the guitar. "You promised. Last time. Dad, can you play? Remember?" The words echoed Lily's from the diner, innocent and insistent, twisting the knife of his long deferrals. Isolation had been his refuge after the divorce, the Hawks his family when walls rose at home. But the road's circuit had brought clarity. Redemption wasn't fleeing ghosts. It was facing them with strings in hand. He nodded, the motion heavy but resolved, and crossed to the case. Dust motes stirred as he lifted the acoustic, the wood smooth under calloused fingers, familiar as an old scar. Sarah perched on the couch's edge, blanket pooled around her, eyes wide in the lamplight's soft halo. Jack sat beside her, tuning absently, the notes twanging sharp, then settling into harmony. The house creaked around them, wind rattling the windows like distant applause, the scent of cooling coffee from the kitchen lingering. "What song?" she asked, leaning in, her breath a warm puff against his arm. One from a long time ago, he said, voice gravelly, introspection threading through. Neon promises. Wrote it for someone who needed it, didn't know it'd circle back. He began, fingers finding the chords with a hesitance that melted into flow, the melody filling the room like smoke from a dying fire. Under the neon sky, I wrote your name in the dust, promises flickering like stars we couldn't trust. His voice joined, low and unpolished, carrying the ache of stolen years, Voss's betrayal, Elena's widowhood, Lily's quiet hunger. Sarah listened, unmoving, her hand slipping into his knee, a small anchor in the introspection. As the last chord hummed to silence, tears traced her cheeks. Not sorrow, but something deeper. Connection, the bridge he'd built without realizing. That was for Mom, wasn't it? Before she left. Her whisper hung, the late revelation blooming, the song's roots tangled with their own fractures. Jack's gift to a CEO unknowingly echoing the lullabies he'd hummed to Sarah as a baby, before the road claimed him. He set the guitar aside, pulling her close, the emotional turn complete. For all of us, maybe. The ones we protect, even when it hurts. Outside, engines hummed faintly in the distance. Perhaps a lone rider, or just the wind's illusion. But the Hawks code resonated here, in the quiet loyalty of father and daughter. Society saw bikers as shadows. But in this house, under the porch light's glow, Jack evolved fully, from isolated wanderer to redeemed guardian, compassion's melody weaving family from the margins. Sarah yawned, nestling against him, the blanket enveloping them both. Play it again tomorrow, for the road stories too? Every day, he promised, the words a vow, as the night deepened around them. In the hush of that small house, a single chord lingered, proof that strength lies not in silence, but in the songs we finally sing. Subscribe for more stories of compassion, justice, and redemption. Thank you for watching The Case of Dad Can You Play? A Daughter's Request reveals Iron Hawks. Biker wrote love song for a CEO 16 years ago. See you in the next one.